Welcome to the MC3 Executive Podcast. In this episode, we're exploring the Urgency Stabilisation System. Urgency is one of the most misunderstood forces in leadership. Many leaders believe urgency comes from deadlines, targets, and timelines. It doesn't. Urgency is primarily emotional. It is the signal that tells people how quickly to move, how much attention to give a situation, and how much risk they are expected to tolerate. The challenge is that urgency is rarely interpreted consistently across global organizations. A message that sounds calm in one region may sound highly urgent in another. A short email may be seen as efficient by one team and alarming by another. A brief comment during a meeting may trigger immediate escalation in one location while barely registering in another. The problem is not disagreement. The problem is interpretation. People experience urgency differently. And when urgency lands differently, organizations begin to fracture. Some teams speed up. Others slow down. Others escalate unnecessarily. Others wait for more clarity. The Urgency Stabilisation System was designed to prevent this. Its purpose is simple: to create speed without creating panic. To accelerate action without increasing emotional pressure. To help organizations move quickly while remaining aligned. Let's begin with a simple idea. Urgency is not a request to move faster. It is a leadership signal that reshapes behavior. When urgency is too high, teams panic. Mistakes increase. Escalation becomes excessive. Decision quality falls. When urgency is too low, momentum disappears. Problems remain unresolved. Important decisions are delayed. Opportunities are missed. And when urgency is inconsistent across regions, alignment begins to break down. This is where many leaders encounter difficulties. They communicate urgency unintentionally. Not through their words, but through their tone, their pacing, their timing, their body language, their silence. A leader may believe they are providing a neutral update. Meanwhile, teams are interpreting concern, frustration, or crisis. The emotional signal becomes stronger than the actual message. The result is confusion. Not because communication failed, but because urgency landed unevenly. This leads us to an important distinction. Safe urgency. Safe urgency creates movement without creating fear. It accelerates action without triggering panic. It sharpens focus without narrowing judgment. And it increases speed without creating unnecessary emotional cost. Safe urgency is not built on pressure. It is built on clarity. Think about the difference between these two experiences. Running because you are being chased. Or running because you know exactly where you need to go. Both create movement. Only one creates confidence. The goal of the Urgency Stabilisation System is to create the second experience. Movement driven by purpose rather than fear. This becomes particularly important in global organizations because different cultures operate at different natural speeds. Some cultures value immediate action. Others value careful analysis. Others place greater emphasis on consultation and relationship building before decisions are made. Under pressure, these differences become even more visible. Fast-moving teams move faster. Deliberative teams slow down. Relationship-focused teams prioritize alignment before execution. The objective is not to make everyone move at the same speed. The objective is to ensure everyone interprets urgency through the same emotional logic. A high-performing global organization is not necessarily fast. It is synchronized. People may work at different rhythms, but they understand the signal in the same way. That is what creates alignment under pressure. So how do leaders stabilize urgency? The MC3 system uses 3 emotional stabilizers. First, explain the intent behind the urgency. Second, define the boundaries around the urgency. Third, check how the urgency has been interpreted. For example, this requires increased focus, not crisis mode. Or, The timeline is firm, but the emotional tone should remain steady. Or, act quickly, but avoid premature escalation. Or, this is not a warning. It is a priority adjustment. These statements remove ambiguity. They transform urgency into direction. People understand not only what needs to happen, but how they are expected to respond emotionally. Of course, even well-calibrated messages occasionally land badly. One region moves too quickly. Another becomes cautious. Another becomes silent. When this happens, strong leaders do not ignore the problem. They recalibrate. A simple reset may sound like this. To clarify, this requires timely action, but it is not an emergency. Or, if the earlier message felt intense, let me restate the intended urgency level. Or, we are increasing focus, not escalating risk. These small corrections can prevent days or even weeks of misunderstanding. They help teams resynchronize. They restore confidence. And they demonstrate that urgency is being managed deliberately rather than emotionally. When urgency becomes stabilized, organizations change. Teams move faster without fear. Regions interpret messages more consistently. Escalations become more predictable. Decision-making improves. And performance rises naturally. Urgency stops being a source of organizational drift. It becomes a strategic asset. Consider this example. Before stabilization, a message labeled as urgent created 3 different reactions. One region accelerated aggressively. One region stopped to seek clarification. And one region escalated minor issues. Now compare that with a stabilized message. When I say this is urgent, I mean fast decisions and controlled execution. Act quickly on alignment and visibility. Do not accelerate tasks without checking for constraints. Notice the difference. The urgency remains. But the emotional interpretation becomes clearer. The boundaries become visible. And the organization moves together. This week, pay attention to how urgency is communicated within your team. Ask yourself, am I creating clarity? Or am I creating pressure? Because urgency is not a shout. It is a shared signal. And when that signal is stable, organizations can move quickly without losing alignment. Thank you for listening to the MC3 Executive Podcast.